Now, Freddy vs. Jason is a 2003 horror movie collaboration that pits two of the most infamous horror movie boogeymen of the 80s and 90s in a battle for supremacy. We have the demon from Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, squaring off against Mrs. Voorhees' baby boy, Jason Voorhees. Who wins? Everyone, place your bets. And here are 5 reasons why you should watch Freddy vs. Jason. Coming up on CEDtalks Horror. Now, the movie tells the story of Freddy Krueger, who is infamous for terrorizing the children of Elm Street in their dreams, but isn't powerful enough to make a comeback to do the killing himself. Now, while lamenting his reign of terror, he resurrects Jason Voorhees of Camp Crystal Lake, disguised as Jason's mom. But because Jason would do anything for the old mommy, Freddy uses Jason's obedience to his mom to kill on his behalf by murdering a new set of teens on Elm Street to make both the parents and the teens remember who Freddy is, because it is fear that gives Freddy his power. But since the parents of Springwood has found a way of keeping their children from dreaming about as well as no longer remembering who Freddy is, and by nature they have no fear of Freddy, and without that fear, Freddy can no longer harm the children of Elm Street. But when Jason goes on a killing spree and refuses to stop killing, the children of Elm Street are now afraid of Jason and not Freddy. Now this makes Freddy angry with Jason, and he plans to end him, but killing Jason will prove to be easier said than done. So why should you watch this movie? Reason number 1, a long time coming. Now, back in 1987, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees were megastars in the 80s. They transcended the horror genre and crossed over to pop culture quite frequently. But it was during this time that rumblings had begun to pit Jason, who was a Paramount property, against Freddy, who was a New Line Cinema property. Now, with all the red tape that was possible, it was pretty certain that this was just a fan's pipe dream and nothing more. But there were other ideas to drum up interest, and we get Jason versus Carrie from the Stephen King mythos. But not exactly. Instead of bringing in Carrie White, the franchise would introduce Tina Shepard. Now, like Carrie, Tina was a telekinetic, and their art would be featured in Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. And it was well received, and it served as a holdover to possibly getting a Jason and Freddy movie going. But failed scripts and copyrights would be the death of this movie. But the fans would be shocked when in 1993, in the movie Jason Goes to Hell the Final Friday, the movie ended with Freddy grabbing Jason's mask and bringing it down to hell with him. Now this would resurrect interest, but this time the fans themselves felt that this movie was close. But nothing would be heard of this movie for the next 10 years. But in 2003, the pipe dream would become a reality. And reason number 2, the best of both worlds. Freddy vs. Jason is a movie that, despite the negative responses it got, it gave us children who were now grown, and I think I was nearly a senior in high school, but it gave us the best of Jason and the best of Freddy. Now, I have to give props to filmmaker Ronnie Yu, who took all of the coolness of the Friday the 13th and merged it perfectly with all of the coolness of A Nightmare on Elm Street. That meant you had the hot women, the sex scenes, the nudity, and the insane brutality of a Jason movie. And then you had the surrealness, the crude jokes, the set pieces, and unpredictability of a Freddy movie. And nothing else really mattered. And reason number 3, it opened doors for all team-up movies. Yes, now Freddy vs. Jason made it possible for many movies in the future, including Alien vs. Predator, The Avengers, The Justice League, and the myriad of sci-fi originals that featured all of their Beast vs. Beast movies. Now sure, Freddy vs. Jason wasn't the first team-up movie, but in the modern era, they made it possible for companies to see that these movies could be profitable. It wasn't just 2 popular characters that happened to meet. It was 2 fan bases, 2 franchises, 2 separate IPs, and most importantly, it was 2 of the very best iconic figures of their day to come together under one roof. And this was by far the highest rated passion project ever seen. And reason number 4, the last of a dying breed. The slasher brand will always be synonymous with 2 names, Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger. I mean, you can't tell the history of slasher movies without these characters. And I know people who hate horror movies. I know people who don't watch much television at all and know explicitly who Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger are. Now, these characters transcend the movie world, and since the 1980s, these franchises own the theaters, and in 2003's Freddy vs. Jason, we will see the last of the original run of these characters, and this would also be the very last time Robert Englund suit up as Freddy Krueger. Now, like it or not, we're not getting these times back. Those movies are gone. And the world has changed so much, and these characters epitomize the time when the slasher genre was king. And reason number 5, this answered the mythical question without bias. Now, Freddy vs. Jason answered the age-old question. Who would win in a fight between Jason versus Freddy? I mean, you have to understand that this movie was not supposed to happen. It couldn't happen. The question was held in such high regard because of the mythical novelty. I mean, 9 times out of 10, this movie shouldn't exist. These questions weren't meant to be answered. They were hypothetical. They were meant to spark debate. And in a movie that was both a labor of love as well as a love letter to the fans, Ronnie Yu walked a tightrope, and he did it gracefully. I mean, some people say that he cowered out, but I don't think so. I mean, if you watch that movie, you see Ronnie Yu answer that question masterfully. I mean, after the fight, we see Jason emerge from out of Camp Crystal Lake with Freddy's head. Now, assuming that he's the winner of the fight, but to navigate these waters, the camera pans into Freddy's decapitated head, and Freddy's head winks and gives that maniacal laugh. And to me, that was a chef kiss, because that was the right move. And I give Ronnie Yu all sorts of grief for not including Kane Hodder in this movie, but this decision was literal perfection. Freddy vs. Jason meant a lot to people in my era. I mean, this movie shouldn't have been done. It wasn't meant to happen. You have to understand how unapproachable this concept was. It was like watching the Justice League movie, and after killing Darkseid, you see in the midst of rubble, Goku holding a dead Master Roshi's body in his arms. I mean, understand the impact of something like that happening today. I mean, it's almost like watching a Mortal Kombat sequel, and Shao Kahn has run out of options and is talking to a mysterious figure, and that mysterious figure turns out to be M. Bison. I mean, there would be a ripple effect, because this is what Freddy vs. Jason meant to the horror world. I mean, you have the upper echelon of slashers converging into one singularity. You have to understand that this movie didn't need to give us a tight script. You have to understand that this movie didn't need to give us the best and most likable characters. All we asked for was to give us a little bit of both worlds and bring us one final bloody fight. And this movie delivered in spades. Freddy vs. Jason is a masterpiece, and I reject any negativity, any negative nitpicking this movie has ever gotten. So go ahead and prove me wrong, because I got time today.